Well, look at this. We're in the middle of the Northern Portugal countryside, not far from Ponte De Lima. You may have seen on the YouTube channel, we've recorded a few joyous videos of our day in Ponte De Lima yesterday. More of a rural experience today with Joao Do Norte, who's here with me as we have having a little stroll before we set off back to the Silver Coast. Hello. Great question in, John, about somebody said, it was Amy actually, who said, looks really nice. Is it, well, sorry for not for quoting you verbatim here, Amy, but I think the gist of the question was, looks really nice, sounds really nice, but is it cold up there? Now this is a constant inquiry, isn't it, about the north? People thinking they want to move to Portugal, love the Portuguese lifestyle, but will it be freezing cold up there? What's your experience, John?
Yeah, I would say, in all honesty, that's much more of a myth, because when you're really honest about it, it is still a Mediterranean climate. Yeah. There are palm trees. It is much milder than elsewhere in Europe. If you think of southern France, right, along the Mediterranean coast, and it's tropical and warm. Well, that's much further north than here. Yeah. So no, I would not say it's cold and unpleasant. Obviously, it's much further north and much colder than, let's say, the Sahara Desert, but
or even the Algarve,
the Algarve. Yeah. But it's all relative. Yeah. But what it is much greener. Yes. And much more mountainous. Yeah. And much more forested, and more rivers. Yeah. So it's really what you like. You know, if you're someone who's into surfing, then you obviously want to be on the beach. If you are into paddleboarding and that sort of thing, and the beach life and golf, then you want to be in the Algarve. If you like city life and lots of concerts and sporting events every day, then you want to be in the big cities. But if you just want a nice quiet life where you can go and enjoy those things when you like, as you like, well then you live somewhere like here.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way you could describe today as being cold. No. I don't know what the actual temperature is, but we are having a most beautiful stroll in the northern Portugal countryside. Been down to the river, and as an Englishman I can say this is like this will be a glorious summer's day in England, in the UK. And perhaps a better way of putting it, you know, is the north of Portugal cold? It's cooler, isn't it? Factually, you know, climatologically, it's cooler, relatively speaking, cooler than your Algarve and your Silver Coast, for example. But it is by no means cold. What's it like? What's the depth of winter like, though, John? Does it get chilly, cold, and bleak in the winter months?
Well, pretty much anywhere in Portugal can get like that.
That's a good point, sir. Well made.
Yeah, I was just remarking to Carl the other day. It was like, well, yes, this winter it was quite rainy and quite overcast and wet. But
sorry, we've got a little baby with us today being carried. If you're going to be carried, you have to be quiet, okay? Because John and I are talking here. Or you can use those lovely big legs of yours and catch up with your mum. All right. So just stay there and let John speak for a minute.
As I was saying, before I was rudely interrupted.
Yes.
Yeah, so along the Silver Coast, San Martino, I mean, they had lots of rain. If you recall in the news, Lisbon had lots of flooding, Porto had flooding. Yes. So it was rainy and wet and cold everywhere. Yeah. Not so much just here, so I think that gets a bit of a bad rap. Yeah. Because obviously it is colder and rainier in all of Portugal in the winter. Yeah. And maybe, relatively speaking, it's a few more rainy days, but I think comparatively, it's all about the same.
You know, it's really interesting because this is as much as Algarve people might want to debunk myths about the Algarve. There's definitely something about the north and this idea of it being cold. And you've made some great points there about it, but I think that'll run and run. It is an area I think that's misunderstood, and it's because people don't know it very well, and that makes it worse, doesn't it? I think what people don't know, exactly, they kind of make up, and so there's a perception issue about it being colder because it's more northern in Europe. But like you said, The temperature today is fantastic, and I imagine you experience a lot of this, and you will do throughout the year.
Yeah, I was going to say one more myth that I might want to dispel is that of it being like the remote hinterlands that where you can't buy vegetables, or you can't ever hear a concert or something.
Yes.
And that's so not true. I think I've said it on numerous occasions that we have several major airports that are within close distance.
Yeah.
Lisbon isn't the only airport in Portugal. We have Porto, which is only 50 minutes away from here. You have Vigo, which is an airport in northern Spain, which is an hour. You have Braga, which is only 30 minutes away. Yeah. Major sporting teams, football teams in Braga and Porto.
Oh yes.
You have concerts and various cultural events. We have a theater in town, where they have jazz concerts and other things. Viana do Castelo is just 20 minutes down the river, and major train station to get to anywhere else in Portugal. If you don't have a car and would rather go by train, it's a short bus ride and then a train to anywhere you want. So it's actually quite conveniently accessible to pretty much anything you would want to do. The major difference with actually being in a metro area, urban area, is you could, like on a lark, decide, hey, I want to go to the orchestra or something spontaneously. Here you'd plan that, and you just have a nice special weekend to Braga or Porto or something like that. So,
but it is no way a backwater. The Lima is just the source in so many ways of a great culture here, and we had a most amazing day in the town of Ponte De Lima, the village I think they prefer to call it, don't they? People coming over from Spain, a few tourists, local people loving life. It was just such a brilliant day, and this today a contrast of being out of the town and in the countryside here and celebrating the treasure that is Ponte De Lima itself and the countryside of northern Portugal. One more thing, John, as Columbo might say.
Yes.
This myth, another one then, and thank you for being the guardian of and the buster of myths about northern Portugal.
This will be a sustainer of myth.
Yes. And we did mention the story yesterday of the Centurions, but I was struggling a little bit with the factual basis, and I think you've got something that's a little bit more concrete for us today.
Yeah, I found a website to give us a little more details.
Should we stand in the shade here for a minute? Because it's hot. Northern Portugal is hot today.
Today it's warm. Yeah, so ironically, this website is called Mostly True.
Okay. Well, it's more true than I probably was yesterday.
Yeah. So this is the legend of Ponte De Lima. So Ponte De Lima is one of the oldest towns in Portugal. I think we've said that before. It's a very beautiful bridge spanning the Lima River, going back to Roman times. So Ponte De Lima's ties to the Romans is reflected most uniquely in the legend of the River Lima. So around 139 BC, the Romans... It's going back a bit. Yeah, the Romans had turned their attention to the conquering of the Celtic tribe of the Galeci. You may have heard of Galicia, who controlled Iberia. And it was a hard-fought campaign covering what is now known as Spain and Portugal. So according to legend, when the war-weary Romans first reached the Lima River, they mistook it for a river they knew of called the Lethe, which is the river of forgetfulness and one of the 5 major rivers of Hades. So the soldiers were afraid that the water would cause them to lose all their memory. And in my editorial comment it was probably not a bucolic, beautiful blue sky day when they arrived here. It was probably some wintry, misty day, so it would have been a little bit more intimidating. So they were afraid that they would lose their memory and refuse to cross the river. Their commander was known as General Decimus Junius Brutus Callaicus.
Of course.
And he was frustrated that the river was impeding his military campaign. So despite their seeking, he decided that he would then ride across the river. He would ride across the river and urge his men to follow. But despite seeing their commander on the other side of the river, beckoning them to come over and that everything was fine, the soldiers were not convinced. And so the general had the brilliant idea to call each of them by name. So he was there yelling, "Are you Spartacus?"
What?
Yes, that's
they
what
they got left behind. That's right.
They've been left behind.
Yeah.
So then he says, "Are you Spartacus?" And so this one, "I am." And
that's right.
Yes. So the general then called them each by name, and the troops were astonished that their commander had retained his memories. They crossed the river and joined their fearless leader, their fears dispelled with their memories intact. And so today, the legend is celebrated by a display of statues along the riverbanks, troops on the near side of the bank, and their general waving them onwards on the opposite side of the river.
Beautiful, and we saw that yesterday, didn't we? What a great story!
Yeah,
and the rest is history.
And the rest is history. Still is.
Which you get a great sense of in Ponte De Lima. It's so historically rich. And thanks for that, John. And one further aside or comment I would add is for Brits, it's the most English-feeling place I've been to, and I don't mean that in a kind of Algarve way, as in surrounded by English people. I mean it's the most
the Gothic
how it appears and how it feels historically is the most England and UK like I have experienced in Portugal.
Well, we were at a pub yesterday afternoon. It felt a little bit like the York Shambles area.
That's right. The little lanes, the buildings are very close together. They're made of a familiar material, a lot of granite buildings, and you're down by the river. It felt like Totnes. It felt like York. Quite amazing as a little aside there for British people. So thank you, John.
Yeah, without the crowds and tourists.
Without the crowd, that's true. Without it didn't feel in any way overbearing or too much. We had a bit of a pub crawl basically, didn't we? Or a cafe crawl.
Cafe.
And you can do that.
Ice cream thrown in there.
Ice cream in there as well. And we've had, thanks to you, John, we've had the most wonderful time here. So thank you for a lovely couple of days, and thank you for being the ever giving and proud representative of the North. Joao Do Norte, everybody. Thank you very much.